Reviewing a camera that's dang near perfect, but also talking about its cons is really similar to me just going over to that old lady who lives in my ditch and giving her steak from Chipotle, and she complains and says, no, I want chicken. And I know that makes perfect sense, but also, is the Canon 80 maybe the perfect chicken and steak bowl from Chipotle? Well, I took this camera to a rap festival called Holy Smoke and put this thing through its paces for a gig to kind of find out some of the cons and the pros in an extreme environment. I'm talking extreme low light, outdoors in the bright sun, hot temperatures, and tons of moving subjects in crazy lighting scenarios. And I rented the Canon C80 kit with my own money so I can find out for myself, and maybe for you guys, if this camera is worth investing in for video production in 2025 and beyond. I'm excited to get into it with you guys, and today's video is sponsored by my friends at Frameset, and we'll talk about them at a completely random time in the video. Let's get into the C80 pros for this specific situation I was using it in. This is not like an in-depth review or anything, by the way. This is like me using it on a gig for a few days and giving you some impressions and thoughts. First off, let's talk about the body design. Also, shout out to the one other guy at this event that had a C80. I felt very validated when I saw him there. I was like, yeah, he's rocking it. He's got it on a gimbal. He's going handheld. Shout out to you, dude. The body design of this camera is super interesting, and I thought it was gonna feel more awkward than it actually did in practice. It actually feels pretty dang well balanced. I had a 24-70 RF lens on it, and with the top handle that the C80 comes with, it felt really good for all day run and gun shooting. It wasn't too heavy, but it was just heavy enough where it kind of helped me smooth out my footage because it doesn't have IBIS. We'll get into that stuff. It feels like they took the concept of Blackmagic by making like a cinema DSLR body, but they went 10 steps further with all the insane features they packed in. Some of those features are HDMI and SDI out, which was how I was able to tell that guy's camera was a C80, not a C70, because it has that little SDI notch just poking out of the top. Dual SD card slots, so you get affordable media options, love that. It's got a 6K stacked sensor with a triple base ISO that I definitely screwed up the first day, and I'll tell you why here in a second. And the camera also seems to have really good dynamic range, amazing colors. It shoots internal RAW at 6K 30p, and with an external recorder, you can get 6K 60p. Kind of annoying, honestly, especially because on my way more affordable Lumix camera, the S1 II, I can get nearly 6K 60 and also open gate. We'll get to it. But really, it's not a deal breaker for me because for this kind of stuff and a lot of what I shoot, I don't really care about RAW all that much unless it's like a high-end project or something I want to look as perfect as possible. But for event coverage like this, I just shot in DCI 4K. And the 4K footage, the all-intra specifically, looks absolutely freaking amazing coming out of this camera. Now, like I said, the camera does not have IBIS, but it does have some digital stabilization options. It's already pretty heavy where you don't get a lot of those micro jitters. And if you're just standing still and you want really smooth footage, you can crank on the digital and get pretty good results. But I didn't know how it was gonna react because I was doing a lot of handheld stuff. So anytime I was moving my feet, I had the stabilization turned off just to be safe. Now, speaking of high movement settings, rolling shutter is definitely gonna play a factor, especially if you're shooting at lower frame rates like 24 to 30. Once you get up to 60 and 120, stuff like that, you don't really have to worry about it. But even in the lower frame rates, I didn't notice any sort of rolling shutter, and I was moving the camera a lot. So that's definitely nice that they've improved that, and it seems to be good. The colors are fantastic on this camera. It's so cliche at this point, just saying Canon colors, but there is something kind of magical about it. It just looks really good with a basic transform on it, which is amazing. And I found that grading the C-Log footage was very flexible, and I got solid results in DaVinci. It looks so good, dude. So I think if you're looking for something that just has a pristine image and very clean image straight out of the camera without noise reduction in post, this camera's gonna give you that. Speaking of clean footage, this camera, this sensor has a triple base ISO design, and I'll tell you how I screwed that up. So in C-Log, the base ISOs are these right here, but to get the cleanest image out of those ISOs, you have to set them to their base ISO at those values. So if you're at this low base ISO and you just scroll the ISO up to the second or the third native ISO, it's gonna be super noisy at 3200 or 12,800 because your base is still at that lower value. But if you click the base up to 3200, then 3200 looks freaking clean. Same, if you switch the base to 12,800, that looks really freaking clean too. So if you set that to a custom button or just get used to changing that whenever you need to, it is so powerful, especially in a situation like I was in, where I was sometimes filming outside and I needed a really low ISO, and I would use NDs to help expose. And then there was times where the sets and the stages were so dark that I actually did have to crank it up to 12,800, and I would shoot in something like 60 or 120 frames per second and still get super crazy clean footage. But during the first day of filming, I didn't know about that base gain switching you have to do. So I shot a lot of 12,800, but my base was set to the lowest value. So my footage looked so dang noisy, basically unusable. And that's a bummer because I got some really banging shots that first night. And the internal NDs are really what make this camera next level, in my opinion. They're so awesome to have, especially for run and gun, event coverage, anything where you just need speed and just good exposure on the fly without worrying about screw-on filters and stuff like that. The NDs are great, and you can extend the ND range and get a lot of ND. So if you're in really bright situations, but you still want shallow depth of field, then you can absolutely get that with this camera. It looks so awesome. Now, autofocus. I think back in the day, Canon was obviously number one. Now everybody talks about Sony, Canon, where do they stand? At least on this camera, I was expecting a little bit better autofocus. I did experiment with the different speeds and kind of like stickiness settings with the autofocus. I don't remember what it was called. I don't have the camera anymore, but I never got it to feel quite like perfect. But also keep in mind, I was filming in a very intense situation where the lights were constantly changing and flashing. Subjects were always moving. There was tons of people in the foreground and the background. So the camera really had to put in the work to focus, but I did find that once it found the subject, it was pretty locked on. It felt pretty natural and smooth. We're gonna get into the big flaws of the C80, but I wanna tell you about how I used FrameSet to set myself up for success for this festival shoot. I shot 2 commercials in the past couple years that I used FrameSet to build out the scripts and storyboards with, and I was able to find really high res and high quality frames to basically get the exact shot I wanted to get on set, but already have it set up for pre-production. And if you do that kind of workflow in pre-production, your on-set experience is gonna be so much faster and just more enjoyable because you take the guesswork out of everything because you chose exactly what kind of shots you want ahead of time. I still think my Tim the Tatman commercial project turned out so punchy and good because I used FrameSet to build out every single shot of that project, and they didn't even sponsor that project. I just used it because I loved it. But FrameSet made some big updates recently that makes things faster and higher quality. So now you can prompt whatever you want in the search bar, and very fast, FrameSet will spit out high quality results faster than that old lady in my ditch spit out the steak. It just elevates your entire process. It's gonna impress your clients, impress the people that you're hiring to work with you on your crew, because you're doing it the right way and it looks amazing. It's gonna set you up for success. So if you want to explore FrameSet, use the top link in the description or the link in the pinned comment. It would mean the world to me if you support them because it directly supports this channel so I can keep going. And it's a lot more affordable than you might think. So check it out. FrameSet, thank you guys so much for the sponsorship. Now let's get into the cons. There's 3 big things about the C80 that hold it back for me personally. The first one was a total surprise to me, and that's that the 120 frames per second 4K footage looked way softer than I was expecting, and I was actually very disappointed by that because I shot a lot of 120 to get the motions of these amazing artists. But I should have recognized the red flag when you can't shoot 120 in all intra, it's only long GOP. I thought it would still be fine, and maybe the file would just be more difficult to edit, but the quality is significantly reduced in sharpness and just overall detail compared to the 4K 24p all intra footage. I can't say that it's bad, but I've definitely gotten better results on cheaper cameras that shoot 4K 120. So luckily the 120 didn't really look good at this event because it made all the lights create this crazy like rolling shutter or whatever it's called effect on my footage. So I got way better results with 4K 24 and 4K 60, which both look amazing, by the way. So if you don't really need perfect 120p footage, then I guess you don't have to worry about that one. The second bummer for me is the fact that it's RF mount, which is extremely obvious. It's a freaking Canon camera. And I'm not gonna just sit here and beat a dead horse. We all know that the RF mount for full frame cameras is very closed off. So companies like Tamron and Sigma can't make stuff for it. And that's just such a bummer because I really like full frame Sigma lenses and I would love to be able to use them on this camera, and it would genuinely make me consider this camera as a serious contender for something I would buy for myself. But because it's only Canon RF lenses for autofocus lenses, it's genuinely like not an interest for me. All right, and then the third big downfall for me is the fact that, gosh, we're beating more dead horses here. Sorry, horses, tribe on the move. There's no open gate footage. And I think this is such a huge miss, not just because of reframing for social media and stuff, but this is a 6K stacked sensor, and you can get 6K 60p technically out of this camera. So it would have been amazing to have a 6K open gate file, even if it was like the Lumix cameras where it's 420 10-bit or something like that. I think that would be extremely useful in so many shooting situations. I did social edits from this event, and I'm working on this video, which is horizontal, obviously, and it would have been amazing to have a little bit more real estate to edit that way to get my shots looking better for social. But alas, here we are waiting for OpenGate from all these other brands. Other than that, this camera is an insanely well-rounded, absolute monster of a workhorse videography, cinematography camera. It's kind of in a league of its own with its body shape and the insane amount of features Canon jam-packed into this thing. And honestly, it is the only Canon camera right now that makes me actually interested in like looking back at Canon as a brand that I would genuinely consider for my personal stuff. Even though I started on Canon way back in the day with my T5i and I've gone a million different directions, but the C80 is their most interesting camera to me personally. But other than that, make sure to text me when you get home so I know you're safe, and watch out for deer. Follow me on Instagram for my upcoming collab with Michael Tate. And remember that you guys are absolutely loved, way more than you might even know. And I'll see you in the next video. All right, bye.